The stars twinkled in the vast darkness of space. For thousands of years, the galactic hegemony ruled over 3 spiral arms of the Milky Way. They were proud. They were strong. They had never known defeat. In their grand meeting halls, alien leaders from 100 worlds spoke of peace. But this peace came with a price. Join us, they told each new world they found, or face our wrath. Most chose to join. Admiral Taewon Kim stood on the bridge of Earth's newest ship, the Indomitable. His weathered face showed the marks of 40 years in Earth's space forces. He had seen humanity reach for the stars, build their first colony on Proxima Centauri b, and now create this marvel of engineering. "Admiral, you should see this," said Captain Jiho Choi, his tactical officer. Jiho's fingers moved quickly over the control panel. A hologram appeared, showing a distant star system. Proxima Centauri, Earth's only colony beyond the solar system. "And now a place of tragedy. The diplomatic vessel," Taewon asked, though he already knew the answer. "Destroyed, sir. The hegemony claims it was an accident." Taewon's jaw tightened. 300 people, scientists, diplomats, families, gone because some alien empire decided Earth wasn't worth talking to as equals. And our colony? Safe for now. The hegemony has given them 1 month to accept rule or face consequences. In another part of the ship, Dr. Jaein Park worked tirelessly. Her small frame bent over complex machinery, her brilliant mind focused on the task at hand. At 42, she had revolutionized humanity's understanding of physics. The engine room of the Indomitable was her greatest achievement. "Dr. Park," a voice called over the communication system. "The Admiral requests your presence on the bridge." When Jaein arrived, Taewon was studying the star charts. "Tell me again," he said without looking up. "What makes this ship special?" Jaein smiled slightly. "Everything, Admiral. The hull contains elements we created in our labs. They don't exist in nature. The energy core uses principles that defy conventional physics. And the propulsion system," she paused, pride in her voice. "It doesn't push the ship through space. It moves space around the ship. And there's nothing like it in the galaxy, nothing we know of. The hegemony has been using the same technology for 1,000 years. They stopped innovating long ago," Taewon nodded slowly. "They destroyed our diplomatic vessel because they were afraid. Their sensors detected something about our technology that scared them." "Yes," Jaein agreed. "They're afraid of what they don't understand, far away, in the grand chambers of the hegemony's central world." Supreme Overseer Hazakt faced angry questions from the Galactic Council. "You ordered the destruction of a primitive vessel?" asked one counselor, their multiple eyes blinking in disbelief. Zicht's scaled skin flushed a deep purple. "The vessel contained energy signatures unlike anything in our records. Our border commander made a judgment call. A judgment call that may bring war." "War?" Zicht laughed, a hissing sound that echoed in the chamber. "With primitives? They have 1 small colony. Their ships take years to travel between stars. What can they possibly do against the might of the hegemony?" Back on Earth, emergency meetings were held in every major government. The United Earth Council gathered in their underground chamber in Geneva. Military leaders, scientists, and political representatives argued about how to respond. "We must evacuate the colony," said one. "We should surrender and join the hegemony," said another. "No," said the president, standing tall among them. "We will not bow to threats. Admiral Kim, is the Indomitable ready?" Taewon stood. "Yes, Madam President. But it's only 1 ship. 1 ship is all we need to show them that humans are not to be underestimated." 2 days later, the Indomitable prepared for its first real mission. The crew of 200 moved with purpose. Engineers checked systems. Tactical officers studied what little they knew of hegemony ships. Medical staff prepared for possible casualties. In her quarters, Jaein looked at a photo of her family. Her husband and 2 children smiled back at her. "I will come home," she whispered to them. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. "Doctor," Taewon said as he entered. "Are you ready?" Jaein put the photo down. "The ship is ready, Admiral. The question is, are we ready for what comes after? Once we show the galaxy what we can do, everything changes." Taewon nodded gravely. "War is always the last option, but sometimes it's the only option. The hegemony needs to learn that humans are not easy prey." On the bridge, the crew took their positions. Communications specialist Su Min Lee sat at her station, her fingers hovering over the controls. "All systems green," reported Jiho. "Weapons charged. Shields at maximum, Dr. Park, Taiwan called. Your engine is about to make history. J-In's voice came through the communication system. The drive is ready, Admiral. It will take us to Proxima Centauri in 3 days instead of 4 years. Sumin looked up in surprise. 3 days? Is that possible? With conventional physics? No, J-In answered. But we're not using conventional physics. Taiwan took his seat in the command chair. Humanity has been reaching for the stars for centuries. Today we truly grasp them. Set course for Proxima Centauri. Let's show the hegemony what happens when they threaten Earth. The Indomitable's engines hummed to life. The massive ship, nearly a kilometer long, began to move away from Earth orbit. Preparing for spacefold drive, announced engineer Hajun Kang from the engine room. All crew should prepare for possible disorientation. Taiwan addressed the ship. Men and women of the Indomitable, we face an enemy that believes we are weak. They destroyed our diplomatic vessel without provocation. They threaten our colony. They expect us to surrender or die. He paused, his voice growing stronger. We will do neither. We will show them that humanity does not bow to bullies, no matter how ancient or powerful they claim to be. A cheer went up from the crew. Engage spacefold drive, Taiwan ordered. The stars outside the viewport stretched into lines of light. Then, with a flash that temporarily blinded the ship's external sensors, the Indomitable vanished from Earth's solar system. In the Proxima Centauri system, a small hegemony observation post monitored the human colony. 2 board officers watched as the colonists went about building their new home. Primitives, one said dismissively. Look how slowly they build. Their structures are so basic. Commander Zarek says they have 1 month to accept hegemony rule. The other replied, but I doubt they'll need that long. Once the reality of their situation sinks in, they'll beg to join us. A sudden alarm blared through the post. Both officers jumped to their stations. Massive energy surge detected. One shouted, something is coming out of... What is that? The space before them seemed to fold in on itself. Then, with a burst of light, a ship appeared. A massive ship unlike anything they had seen before. That can't be, one officer gasped. That's not possible. Emergency transmission to command, the other ordered. Human vessel detected in Proxima Centauri system. Vessel appears to have impossible propulsion technology. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Taiwan looked at the view screen showing the small hegemony observation post. They see us, he said calmly. Good. Sumin, open a channel to both the observation post and our colony. Sumin worked quickly. Channel open, sir. Taiwan stood tall. This is Admiral Taiwan Kim of the Earth vessel Indomitable. To the Proxima Centauri colony, we have come to ensure your safety. To the hegemony forces, you have committed an act of war against Earth by destroying our diplomatic vessel. We demand immediate reparations and recognition of Earth's sovereignty. There was silence for a moment. Then a response came from the observation post. Human vessel, this is observation post Zeta 9. Your demands have been forwarded to command. Remain in position and await response. Ji-Ho leaned toward Taiwan. They're stalling, sir. Probably calling for reinforcements. Of course they are, Taiwan replied with a slight smile. Let them come. That's exactly what we want. Hours passed. The Indomitable remained in position. Its presence a challenge to everything the hegemony thought they knew about humans. In the colony, people looked up at the night sky, knowing that a ship from Earth had somehow traveled 4 light years in days, not years. Hope spread through the colony like wildfire. On the hegemony homeworld, Supreme Overseer Exizect received the report from Proxima Centauri. His scales turned pale as he read about the human ship's capabilities. Impossible, he muttered. They cannot have such technology, but the evidence was clear. Somehow these primitives had developed technology that the hegemony's greatest scientists had only theorized about. Technology that shouldn't exist. Zizika made a decision. Send the border defense fleet, all of it. Destroy that ship before more arrive. As night fell on Proxima Centauri B, the colonists gathered in the main square. Their administrator spoke to the crowd. Earth has not abandoned us. They have sent their newest, most powerful ship to protect us. The hegemony thought we would surrender. They were wrong! Cheers erupted from the crowd. In the distance, visible even from the planet's surface, the Indomitable shone like a new star in the sky. On the ship, Taiwan received a message from Earth. The President sends her regards. Admiral, said the communication officer, She says you are authorized to show the hegemony exactly what the Indomitable can do. Taewon nodded. Tell the President we will not disappoint Earth. Fleet Commander Zarek stood on the bridge of his flagship. His 6 eyes blinked in sequence as he studied the human vessel on the view screen. In his 200 years of service to the hegemony, he had never seen anything like it. Analysis, he demanded. His science officer, a thin alien with pale blue skin, looked nervous. Commander, the readings make no sense. The hull is made of materials not in our database. The energy output is impossible, and there are no visible weapons. No weapons? Zarek laughed harshly. Scan again. All ships have weapons. I have scanned 7 times, the science officer insisted. There are no conventional weapon ports or systems, but there is something else. Energy patterns we cannot identify. Zarek dismissed this concern with a wave of his clawed hand. It doesn't matter. No single ship can stand against 35 vessels of the hegemony border fleet. Prepare to fire warning shots. Let these humans see our power before they die. On the Indomitable, Captain Jiho Choi watched the enemy formation with practiced eyes. At 32, he was young for his position, but his tactical mind had impressed Admiral Kim from their first meeting. They're arranging an attack formation Delta, Jiho observed. Standard hegemony tactics. They'll fire warning shots first, then demand surrender. Taewon nodded. And when we refuse? Full attack. They'll try to surround us and attack from all sides. The Admiral looked calm. Predictable. They've used the same tactics for 1,000 years. Why change what's always worked? Because it's never met the Indomitable, Jiho said with a small smile. On the bridge's communication station, Su-Min Lee listened carefully to the hegemony transmissions. Admiral, they're speaking freely on open channels, she reported. They're not even using basic encryption. They're saying this will be an easy victory. They're placing bets on how quickly we'll be destroyed. Taewon's expression hardened. Arrogance. The greatest weakness of any military force. Su-Min, send a message to the hegemony fleet. Channel open, sir. This is Admiral Kim of Earth Vessel Indomitable. Hegemony fleet, you are violating the sovereignty of Earth space. Withdraw immediately or face consequences. The response was quick and dismissive. Human vessel, this is Fleet Commander Zarek. You have 1 minute to power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Your technology now belongs to the hegemony. Taewon turned to Jiho. They want our technology. That's why they're here in force. Ready defense systems. Non-lethal response first. In the engine room, Dr. Jae-in Park worked rapidly with her team. Her hands moved across control panels, making small adjustments to the ship's revolutionary systems. Engineer Ha-Jun Kang stood beside her, his young face serious. At 28, he was the youngest senior engineer on the ship, a prodigy who had helped Jae-in develop the Indomitable's unique systems. They're going to fire on us, Ha-Jun said quietly. Jae-in nodded without looking up. Yes, are the kinetic barriers ready? Yes, Doctor. But they've never been tested in actual combat. Then this will be quite the test, won't it? Jae-in replied with a calm she didn't entirely feel. On the hegemony flagship, Zarek gave the order. The humans have refused to surrender. Open fire. Warning shots only. 5 hegemony vessels fired energy beams that passed close to the Indomitable, lighting up the darkness of space. No response from the human vessel, reported the tactical officer. Fire directly, ordered Zarek. Low power. Disable their engines. 20 ships fired simultaneously. Beams of bright energy streaked toward the Indomitable from all directions. On the hegemony ships, crew members watched confidently, expecting to see explosions, damage, perhaps even the human ship breaking apart. Instead, they saw something impossible. The energy beams reached the Indomitable and simply stopped. They didn't bounce off shields or cause explosions. They were absorbed into a faint blue field that appeared around the ship, then disappeared. Silence fell across the hegemony flagship's bridge. What happened? Zarek demanded. Where did our attack go? The science officer was frantically checking readings. The human ship has some kind of energy absorption field. It took our attack and appears to have channeled the energy into its own systems. Impossible! Zarek slammed his fist down. No technology can do that. Fire again, maximum power. On the Indomitable, Taewon watched calmly as the enemy prepared a second attack. Kinetic barriers functioning perfectly, Jiho reported with a hint of pride. Dr. Park's design works. Of course it works, Jayan's voice came through the communication system. But I wouldn't recommend letting them hit us too many more times. The energy has to go somewhere. Taewon understood. Time to show them we're not defenseless. Jiho, target their weapon systems only. Precision strikes. Yes, sir, Jiho responded, his fingers moving across the tactical controls. The Indomitable's response was not what anyone in the hegemony fleet expected. There was no massive counterattack, no world-destroying weapons. Instead, thin beams of concentrated energy shot out from the human ship, so precise they hit only the weapon systems on the hegemony vessels. 10 hegemony ships suddenly found their main weapons disabled. The beams had sliced through their armor with surgical precision, cutting power lines and control systems without causing catastrophic damage. Zarek stared in disbelief. What kind of weapons can target so precisely? Before he could get an answer, the Indomitable moved, and its movement defied everything the hegemony knew about physics. The massive ship didn't turn slowly like other large vessels. It changed direction instantly as if the laws of momentum didn't apply to it. "It's heading straight for us," shouted the navigation officer. Zarek felt fear for the first time in decades. "Evasive maneuvers! All ships concentrate fire!" The remaining hegemony ships fired everything they had. The space between the fleets lit up with energy beams, missiles, and plasma bursts. It was enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The Indomitable flew straight through it all. The attacks were either absorbed by the blue field or seemed to pass through the ship as if it wasn't entirely in normal space. On the Indomitable's bridge, Science Officer Min Ji-yoon monitored the ship's experimental phase shift system. At 35, she was one of the world's leading experts in quantum physics, recruited personally by Jae-in for this mission. "Phase shift holding at 60%, she reported. "We're partially out of normal space-time. Most of their attacks are passing through us harmlessly." Taewon nodded. "Perfect. Continue course for the flagship." The crew worked with intense focus as the ship moved through the enemy fleet. They had trained for this, but training couldn't fully prepare them for the reality of battle. Yet they performed flawlessly, trusting in their ship and each other. As the Indomitable approached the hegemony flagship, panic spread through the alien vessel. Zarek barked orders, but his crew was losing cohesion. "It's going to ram us," someone shouted. But at the last moment, the Indomitable stopped, hovering just 500 meters from the hegemony flagship. Close enough that the aliens could see every detail of the human ship through their viewports. Sumin's voice cut through the tension on the Indomitable's bridge. "Admiral, I'm picking up communications from the hegemony fleet. They're in complete disarray. Some ships are preparing to retreat." Taewon stood. "Open a channel to the flagship." "Channel open, sir. Commander Zarek." Taewon's voice was calm but firm. "You have seen what one human ship can do against 35 of yours. We could destroy your entire fleet, but that is not our way. Power down your weapons and we will spare your vessels and crews." On his flagship, Zarek faced the hardest decision of his career. The human ship had effortlessly penetrated his fleet's defenses, disabled multiple vessels, and now sat unscathed before his command ship. His claws dug into the arms of his chair as anger and fear battled within him. "Commander," his first officer spoke quietly, "perhaps we should consider their offer. We cannot defeat this vessel with current tactics." "Retreat is dishonor," Zarek growled. "Death is worse," replied the first officer, "and the hegemony must know about this technology." Zarek knew he was right. "Signal the fleet. Power down weapons." Across the hegemony fleet, weapon systems went offline. The Great Border Fleet, undefeated for centuries, stood down before a single human ship. On the colony world below, humans watched the distant battle through telescopes and sensors. When word spread that the hegemony fleet had surrendered, celebrations erupted across the settlement. Back on the Indomitable, Taewon didn't allow his crew to celebrate yet. "Jiho, maintain weapons lock on all hegemony vessels. Sumin, inform Earth of our status. Minji, continue monitoring their ships for any sign they're powering weapons back up." The crew responded with professional efficiency, but there was a new confidence in their movements, a pride in what they had accomplished. In the engine room, Jaein and Hajun ran diagnostics on all systems. The battle had been the first real combat test of their revolutionary technology. "Energy absorption at 78% efficiency," Hajun reported. "Better than simulations predicted." Jaein nodded, making notes. "The phase shift needs work. We were only able to maintain 60%. If they had attacked longer, we might have had problems. But it worked, Doctor, Hajun said with a smile. Everything worked. We just defeated an alien fleet with minimal damage. Jae-in allowed herself a small smile. Yes, it worked. This time, news traveled fast across the stars. Even at the speed of light, word of the impossible human ship spread through the hegemony's vast communication network. Within days, every world in the three spiral arm empire knew the basic facts. A primitive species called humans had somehow built a warship that defeated 35 hegemony vessels without suffering significant damage. On the hegemony capital world, panic grew among the ruling council. High Counselor Vreet, leader of the War Council, paced the gleaming floor of the emergency session chamber. His gray scales rippled with agitation. This is unprecedented, he hissed. A species that showed no signs of advanced technology suddenly appears with a ship that defies our understanding of physics. Around the circular table, representatives from the hegemony's 30 ruling species watched with varying degrees of concern. Some appeared frightened, others skeptical, and a few seemed almost impressed. The humans must have had help, insisted one counselor. Perhaps the Zeth Collective has been supplying them with technology. Supreme Overseer Eskt dismissed this with a sharp gesture. The Zeth would not dare. They know what happened to the last species that challenged us. Then how do you explain this? This indomitable? Asked another counselor. Our science division claims its capabilities should not be possible. Izikat's scales darkened. I cannot explain it. But I can tell you what we must do. We must gather our forces and crush this threat before it grows. Near the edge of the Proxima Centauri system, the Indomitable maintained its position. The hegemony border fleet had withdrawn to the system's edge as demanded, but they hadn't left completely. Both sides were waiting for instructions from their leaders. On the Indomitable's bridge, Admiral Taewon Kim studied the tactical display showing the positions of the hegemony vessels. His experienced eyes noted their formation, the way they maintained constant communication with each other, and their readiness despite their apparent defeat. They're waiting for reinforcements, he said to Captain Jiho Choi, who stood beside him. Jiho nodded. Yes, sir. Our long-range sensors detected communication bursts being sent toward the hegemony core worlds. They're probably reporting everything they've learned about us. Good, Taewon said, surprising his tactical officer. Let them report. Let them worry about what else we might have. Sumin Lee approached from her communication station. Admiral, we've received a transmission from Earth. The President wishes to speak with you. Taewon nodded. I'll take it in my ready room. In the small office adjacent to the bridge, Taewon activated the secure communication system. The President's face appeared on the screen, her expression a mixture of pride and concern. Admiral Kim, congratulations on your victory. Earth is celebrating what you've accomplished. Thank you, Madam President. But this is just the beginning. The hegemony won't take this defeat lightly. The President nodded. We know. Our analysts predict they will gather a much larger force. How long can the Indomitable hold out against such numbers? Taewon considered his answer carefully. The Indomitable is a remarkable ship, but it has limitations. We absorbed or avoided their attacks this time, but a larger fleet could overwhelm our systems through sheer volume of fire. Then we need to use the time you've bought us wisely, the President said. Dr. Park's team on Earth is already working on improvements based on your battle data. And our diplomatic corps is preparing for possible negotiations. Negotiations? Taewon raised an eyebrow. Yes. We're sending a diplomatic team to Proxima Centauri. Ambassador Do-hyun Hwang will lead it. I believe you know him. Taewon smiled slightly. We served together years ago before he entered the diplomatic service. He's a good choice. He understands both diplomacy and military strategy. Exactly why he was selected. Admiral, your new orders are to protect the colony and support the ambassador's mission. Make the hegemony believe we want peace, and do we? Taewon asked directly. The President's expression hardened. We want to survive, Admiral. And sometimes survival requires making your enemies think you're stronger than you are. In another part of the ship, Dr. Jae-in Park worked with engineer Hajun Kang and science officer Min-ji Yoon to analyze the battle data. The three scientists had converted one of the ship's labs into an impromptu research center, with holographic displays showing every aspect of the Indomitable's performance during the battle. The phase shift system needs improvement, Jae-in said, pointing to a graph showing fluctuations in the field. We were lucky they didn't fire continuously for more than 3 minutes. The system would have failed after 5. Hajun nodded, making notes. I've been working on a solution. If we reconfigure the quantum stabilizers, we might extend that to 8 minutes. Minji looked up from her own work. The hegemony's weapons technology is less advanced than we expected. Their energy weapons operate on principles we abandoned 50 years ago. That's both good and bad news, Jayan replied. Good because we can defend against them more easily than feared. Bad because it means they have room to improve once they recognize their weaknesses. Do you think they will? Hajun asked. Improve, I mean. They've used the same technology for centuries. Jayan's expression was serious. Never underestimate an enemy that feels threatened, Hajun. Complacency is the true enemy of innovation, but fear can drive remarkable advancements. Across the void of space on the Hegemony flagship, Fleet Commander Zarek faced a difficult conversation with his superiors. The holographic image of Supreme Overseer Kazakt glared at him with all 6 eyes. You failed, Commander, Kazakt hissed. Your fleet was defeated by a single vessel from a primitive world. Zarek lowered his head slightly, acknowledging the rebuke. The human vessel has technology we have never encountered before, Supreme Overseer. My tactical officers are still trying to understand how it absorbed our energy attacks and moved as it did. Excuses, Zicht spat. The hegemony does not accept excuses for failure. No, Supreme Overseer, but perhaps it should accept new information. Zarek's tone was carefully respectful but firm. These humans are not like other species we have encountered. They do not think as we do. They do not fight as we do. Zicht's scales rippled with irritation. Explain. Most species we subjugate follow predictable patterns. They either surrender quickly to save lives, or they fight with everything they have and lose. These humans did neither. They had the power to destroy my fleet but chose not to. Instead, they demonstrated their superiority and then offered terms. What is your point, Commander? Garzik demanded impatiently. My point, Supreme Overseer, is that we do not understand how these humans think, and until we do, we risk more failures like mine. Gizicht was silent for a moment, considering. The Grand Armada is being recalled from the Outer Rim. When it arrives, you will join it in a new assault on the human colony and this indomitable. And until then, maintain your position. Observe the humans. Learn everything you can about their ship and their behavior. We need information, Commander Zarek. Do not fail in this mission as you did in battle. The communication ended, leaving Zarek alone with his thoughts. Despite the Supreme Overseer's harsh words, he felt a strange sense of anticipation. In his long career, he had never encountered a truly worthy adversary. Perhaps these humans would provide a challenge worthy of his skills. On Earth, preparations moved forward at a frantic pace. The victory at Proxima Centauri had united humanity in purpose. Nations that had competed for resources now shared technology and expertise. Scientists who had worked in isolation now collaborated openly. Everyone understood what was at stake. In his office at the United Earth Defense Command, Ambassador Do-Hyun Hwang reviewed reports on the hegemony. At 50, he had the dignified bearing of a career diplomat, but his eyes held the sharp awareness of his earlier military career. Lieutenant Yoon-ji Shin, his intelligence officer, entered with a tablet. At 29, she was considered one of Earth's leading experts in xenopsychology, the study of alien psychology. Ambassador, I've completed my preliminary analysis of hegemony diplomatic patterns, she said, handing him the tablet. Do-Hyun scrolled through her report. Interesting. You believe their hierarchical society makes it difficult for them to accept defeat? Yes, sir. The hegemony has been the dominant power in their region of space for over 2,000 years. Their cultural identity is built around superiority. They don't know how to process being technologically outmatched. How will they respond in your assessment? Yoonji's expression turned serious. With overwhelming force initially. But if we can survive that, I believe they might be open to genuine negotiation. They respect strength above all else. Do-Hyun nodded thoughtfully. Then our first task is to survive their response. And for that, we need the hegemony to believe we have more ships like the Indomitable. But we don't, Yoonji said quietly. The technology is too new, too experimental. The hegemony doesn't know that, Do-Hyun replied with a slight smile. And in diplomacy, perception is often more important than reality. Back in the Proxima Centauri system, 3 weeks after the battle, New developments caught everyone's attention. The Indomitable's sensors detected a small vessel approaching from the hegemony fleet. It was unarmed, its systems powered down to minimum levels, clearly a non-threatening approach. The moon orbiting Tau Cetiae was a barren rock, its gray surface scarred by ancient impacts. No atmosphere, no life, no reason for any species to claim it. The perfect neutral ground. The Indomitable arrived first, emerging from its spacefold with a brief flash of light. The massive human ship took up a stable orbit around the lifeless moon, its sensors scanning constantly for any sign of threat. On the bridge, Admiral Tae-Won Kim watched the empty space around them with practiced caution. No sign of the hegemony. "Delegation yet," reported Captain Ji-Ho Choi from the tactical station. "They'll come," Tae-Won said confidently. "They have too many questions about us to stay away." Ambassador Do-Hyun Hwang stood beside the Admiral, his formal diplomatic attire a stark contrast to the crew's uniforms. At 50, the ambassador carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone used to negotiating difficult situations. "What do you think they'll ask first?" Do-Hyun asked, his voice low enough that only Tae-Won could hear. "How many ships like the Indomitable we have?" Tae-Won replied without hesitation. "That's what keeps them awake at night." Do-Hyun nodded. "And how should we answer?" With a smile and a change of subject, Tae-Won said, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. Lieutenant Yoon-ji Shin approached them, her tablet displaying data on hegemony diplomatic protocols. "Ambassador, I've finalized the psychological profiles of the likely hegemony delegates," she said. "Based on their communication patterns, I believe diplomatic envoy Klar will be their chief negotiator, but he won't have final authority to make agreements." "As expected," Do-Hyun replied. "Hierarchical species rarely send representatives with true decision-making power to first meetings. They'll be here to gather information, not to make concessions." "Just like us," Tae-Won observed dryly. "Incoming vessels detected," announced Soo-Min Lee from the communications station. 3 hegemony ships approaching from the system's edge. All eyes turned to the main view screen as 3 sleek alien vessels appeared. 2 were clearly military escorts, their weapons ports visible even at a distance. The third, slightly larger ship bore the markings of the hegemony diplomatic corps. "They're hailing us," Soo-Min reported. Tae-Won nodded. On screen, the familiar blue-skinned face of diplomatic envoy Klar appeared. "Greetings, human vessel Indomitable. We are pleased you have honored our agreement to meet." "We are people of our word, Envoy Klar," Tae-Won responded formally. "The Earth delegation is prepared to meet on the moon's surface as agreed." Klar's large eyes blinked slowly. "Excellent. We suggest a simple structure with atmosphere generators be established at these coordinates." A data stream followed, showing a location on the moon's surface. Do-Hyun stepped forward. "This is Ambassador Do-Hyun Hwang of Earth. I will lead our delegation. The location is acceptable. We will transport our meeting structure to the surface immediately." After the communication ended, Tae-Won turned to Ji-Ho. "Analysis of their ships? Standard hegemony designs," Ji-Ho reported. "The military vessels are Claw-class cruisers, well-armed but nothing we haven't seen before. The diplomatic vessel appears to have enhanced sensor arrays. They're definitely planning to scan us thoroughly." "Let them," Do-Hyun said calmly. "We have nothing to hide, and everything to hide. A diplomatic paradox." He smiled slightly at his own observation. Within hours, both sides had established prefabricated structures on the moon's surface, connected by a short enclosed walkway. The human structure was deliberately modest, a simple meeting room with basic life support systems. The message was clear. Earth did not need to impress with luxuries. The diplomatic team prepared to descend to the surface. Besides Ambassador Hwang and Lieutenant Shin, the team included Dr. Jae-in Park, whose scientific expertise would be invaluable in discussing technical matters without revealing too much. Before they left, Tae-Won pulled Do-Hyun aside for one final conversation. "Remember, old friend, this isn't just about making peace, it's about buying time." Do-Hyun nodded gravely. "I know. Earth needs months, perhaps years, to develop our defenses further. Every day I can keep the hegemony talking is a day our scientists and engineers can work. And watch for treachery, Tae-Wan added. Our sensors will be monitoring everything, but trust your instincts. Always, Do-hyun assured him with a slight smile. I didn't survive 20 years in the diplomatic corps by being trusting. On the moon's surface, the human delegation entered their simple meeting structure. The air was thin but breathable, the gravity generators creating a comfortable Earth-like environment. Lieutenant Shin checked her equipment one final time. Ambassador, I've activated the passive scanner. It will analyze the hegemony delegates' physiological responses during the meeting. Good, Do-hyun nodded. Let's see what makes them nervous. Dr. Park looked up from her own preparations. Remember, I can discuss general scientific principles, but I should avoid specifics about our propulsion or defensive systems. Exactly, Do-hyun agreed. Be impressive with your knowledge, but vague about its applications. A signal indicated the hegemony delegation was approaching through the connecting corridor. The humans stood, presenting a united front as the door slid open. Diplomatic envoy Klar entered first. In person, the alien was taller than the humans had expected, nearly 2 meters high, with the same smooth blue skin they had seen in communications. Behind him came 2 other aliens, one with gray scales similar to Fleet Commander Zarek, and another with purple-tinged skin and 4 arms. Ambassador Huang, Klar greeted with a formal bow. I present Security Advisor Voss and Scientific Observer Miri. He indicated the gray-scaled and purple aliens respectively. Do-hyun bowed in return. Envoy Klar, welcome. I present Lieutenant Yoonji Shin, our cultural specialist, and Dr. Jae-in Park, our scientific advisor. The 2 groups sat at opposite sides of a simple table. For a moment, silence filled the room as both delegations studied each other. Klar spoke first. The Supreme Council of the Hegemony has authorized me to discuss terms for peaceful relations between our civilizations. Earth welcomes this opportunity, Do-hyun replied smoothly. We have always preferred diplomacy to conflict. Security Advisor Voss made a sound that might have been a snort. Your actions at Proxima Centauri suggest otherwise. Do-hyun's expression didn't change. We defended our colony against unprovoked aggression after your forces destroyed our diplomatic vessel. A proportional response. Proportional? Voss's scales rippled with emotion. 1 ship against 35 is proportional? We sent 1 ship because 1 was sufficient, Do-hyun replied calmly. Had more been necessary, more would have been sent. The implied threat hung in the air. Yoonji noted the physiological reactions of the aliens, increased respiration from Voss, a subtle color change in Klar's skin. Klar smoothly redirected the conversation. Perhaps we should discuss the terms of a potential agreement. The hegemony is prepared to recognize Earth's sovereignty over your home system and the Proxima Centauri system. A good starting point, Do-hyun acknowledged. Earth also requires reparations for our destroyed vessel and guarantees of non-aggression against any future colonies we might establish. Future colonies? Voss interrupted again. You speak as if you already have the capability for rapid interstellar expansion. Dr. Park spoke for the first time, her voice calm and measured. The principles that allow the indomitable to travel between stars in days rather than years can be applied to colony ships as well. Distance is no longer the barrier it once was for humanity. The purple-skinned Miri leaned forward, clearly interested. These principles, they involve manipulating space-time itself? In a manner of speaking, Jae-in replied with a polite smile. Though I'm sure you understand that the specific technologies are classified. Miri's 4 hands moved in what seemed to be an excited gesture. But such manipulation requires energy levels that most civilizations cannot generate. How has humanity solved this problem? Jae-in's expression remained pleasant but revealed nothing. Innovation often comes from necessity. Humanity has always excelled at finding solutions to seemingly impossible problems. The conversation continued for hours, moving through various diplomatic and technical topics. The hegemony delegates repeatedly tried to steer the discussion toward the specifics of human technology, while the Earth team consistently redirected to matters of borders, rights, and interspecies protocols. By unspoken agreement, neither side mentioned the elephant in the room. How many ships like the Indomitable did Earth possess? During a brief recess, the human team gathered in a small side room for a private discussion. "They're fishing for information about our capabilities," Yunji observed. "Every question circles back to our technology or production capacity." Do-hyun nodded. "As expected. Lieutenant, what are your observations about their psychological state?" Envoy Clar is professionally calm, but his skin coloration changed noticeably when Dr. Park mentioned applying our technology to colony ships. Security Advisor Voss is angry and defensive, classic response to a perceived threat to status. Scientific observer Miri is genuinely fascinated by our technology, almost to the point of admiration.
"Miri might be our best ally in these talks," Do-hyun mused. "Scientific curiosity can sometimes override political concerns."
6 months after the first encounter between humanity and the galactic hegemony, the landscape of interstellar politics had changed forever. What began with a single ship defending a lone human colony had evolved into a complex relationship between Earth and the ancient empire that ruled 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. On the newly established Galactic Embassy Station orbiting Earth, diplomats from 20 alien species moved through the corridors alongside human representatives. The station, built with a combination of Earth and hegemony technology, symbolized the new era of cooperation, or at least peaceful coexistence. Admiral Taewon Kim stood at a viewport looking out at Earth below. At 55, his hair had more gray than before, but his posture remained straight, his eyes alert. The past 6 months had aged him, but also filled him with a pride he had never expected to feel. "Admiring the view?" asked a familiar voice. Taewon turned to see Ambassador Do-hyun Hwang approaching. The 2 old friends clasped hands warmly. "The best view in the system," Taewon replied, "though I still prefer the bridge of the Indomitable." Do-hyun smiled. "Speaking of which, I hear the refit is almost complete. Dr. Park has been working day and night, I'm told." "She always does," Taewon said with affection. "The improvements should increase the ship's capabilities by at least 30%. They moved away from the viewport, walking together through the station's diplomatic section. Aliens and humans alike nodded respectfully as they passed. The admiral and ambassador who had negotiated humanity's place among the stars were well-known figures now. "The Supreme Council has appointed a new overseer," Do-hyun informed Taewon quietly as they walked. "Supreme Council Chair Zix, apparently more moderate than Gukt. Will it make a difference?" Taewon asked skeptically. "I believe so." Zix was among the first to argue for diplomatic relations with Earth rather than military confrontation. Intelligence suggests he genuinely wants peace. They entered a private meeting room where several other humans waited. Dr. J.N. Park looked up from her tablet, offering a tired smile. Her brilliance had made her a celebrity on Earth, though she shunned the attention, preferring to focus on her work. Captain Ji-ho Choi stood as they entered, still formal despite their long service together. Lieutenant Yoon-ji Shin sat beside him, her analytical mind having proved invaluable during the months of negotiation. "Is everyone here?" Do-hyun asked, looking around. "Engineer Ha-jun Kang and communications specialist Soo-min Lee are still aboard the Indomitable," JN explained. "The new systems require constant monitoring during integration. They send their regrets," Ji-ho added. Taewon nodded and took his seat at the head of the table. "Then let's begin our assessment. 6 months since first contact. Where do we stand?" Do-hyun activated a holographic display showing a map of nearby star systems. "The treaty is holding. The hegemony has recognized Earth's sovereignty over Sol and Proxima Centauri, as well as our right to colonize these 7 additional systems." He indicated green-marked stars on the map. "And our technology exchange program?" Taewon asked, looking at Jae-in. She smiled slightly. "Carefully controlled as planned. We're sharing enough to impress them, but nothing that would allow them to replicate our key advantages. They've been surprisingly forthcoming with their own technology, though most of it is centuries behind our latest developments." "Not all of it," Ji-ho pointed out. "Their matter transmission technology could revolutionize our supply chains if we can adapt it." Yoon-ji tapped her tablet, adding, Psychologically, the hegemony remains in a state of adjustment. 2,000 years of unchallenged supremacy doesn't fade easily. Some factions still push for military action against us, believing our advantage to be temporary. Is it? Do-hyun asked bluntly, looking at Jae-in. The scientist considered her answer carefully. Yes and no. The Indomitable remains our only vessel of its class. The materials and engineering required are too complex for rapid production. However, she paused, a hint of pride in her eyes. The breakthrough that made the Indomitable possible wasn't just about materials or engineering. It was about approach. We questioned assumptions that the hegemony has taken for granted for millennia. That's an advantage they cannot easily overcome. Taewon nodded thoughtfully. So our bluff is working. They believe we have more ships like the Indomitable, or at least the capability to build them quickly. For now, Yoonji cautioned, but their intelligence services are persistent. Eventually they'll discover the truth. By then it won't matter, Jae-in said with quiet confidence. The Defiant-class vessels currently under construction incorporate everything we've learned from the Indomitable. They won't have all its capabilities, but they'll be formidable nonetheless, and there will be 10 of them. The meeting continued, discussing the diplomatic, military, and scientific developments of the past 6 months. Earth was changing rapidly, adapting to its new role on the galactic stage. Nations that had squabbled over resources now united in common purpose. Scientific breakthroughs occurred weekly as researchers built upon the fundamental shifts in understanding that had made the Indomitable possible. When the meeting concluded, Taewon asked Jae-in to stay behind. When they were alone, he turned to his old friend with a serious expression. The truth, Jae-in. How long can we maintain this advantage? She sighed, showing a weariness she had hidden from the others. 5 years, perhaps 10 if we're lucky. The hegemony learns slowly, but they do learn, and they have resources we can only dream of. Thousands of worlds, trillions of citizens. Then we need to use these years wisely, Taewon said. Not to prepare for war, but to ensure our place in the galaxy cannot be threatened again. Jae-in nodded. That's why the Prometheus project is so important. The Prometheus project was Earth's most closely guarded secret, even more so than the true number of advanced ships in its fleet. Only a handful of people knew the details, Taewon and Jae-in among them. How is it progressing? He asked quietly. Ahead of schedule, she replied, a spark of excitement breaking through her fatigue. The theoretical work is solid. We've begun small-scale tests. If it works as we believe it will, it would change everything, Taewon finished for her. Again. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, on the hegemony capital world, Supreme Council Chair Zix studied reports on humanity with growing concern. Unlike his predecessor, he did not underestimate these newcomers to the galactic stage. The intelligence report, is it confirmed? He asked the officer standing before him. Yes, Supreme Chair. Our deep cover agents have penetrated some of Earth's less secure facilities. The information comes at great risk. Zix's 6 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep thought among his species. Show me. A holographic display activated, showing schematics of Earth's shipyards and defense installations. The officer highlighted specific sections. As you can see, Supreme Chair, Earth has only one vessel of the Indomitable class. Their production capabilities cannot support more at this time. So they have been bluffing, Zix mused. Interesting. There is more, the officer continued. They have begun construction on a new class of vessels designated Defiant. 10 are planned. They will not have all the capabilities of the Indomitable, but our analysts predict they will still outmatch our best ships. Zix absorbed this information silently. Then, to the officer's surprise, he began to laugh, a rasping sound rarely heard from his species. Supreme Chair, the officer questioned cautiously. Don't you see the elegance of it? Zix asked. They had one ship, and they used it so effectively that we believed they had a fleet. They bought time with nothing but courage and cleverness. I cannot help but admire such tactics. But now that we know the truth, Zix cut him off with a sharp gesture. Now that we know the truth, we will do nothing different. The treaty stands. But Supreme Chair, with this information, we could gather our forces and crush them before they build their new ships. Zix's scales darkened, a sign of disapproval. And become the very monsters they fear? No. The old ways of the hegemony have brought us to stagnation. 2,000 years of unchallenged power, and what do we have to show for it? Technology that hasn't fundamentally changed in centuries. Tactics so predictable that a single ship could defeat 35. He stood, moving to his own viewport that showed the sprawling capital city below. Perhaps what the hegemony needs is not an enemy to conquer, but a rival to inspire us. These humans, their thinking is different. Their approach to problems is unique. We have much to learn from them. You speak of them almost with admiration, the officer observed cautiously. I do admire them, Zix admitted. And I fear them too, not because of their ships or weapons, but because of their minds. A species that can do so much with so little. Imagine what they might accomplish in a century or a millennium. He turned back to the officer. This intelligence report is now classified at the highest level. Only the Supreme Council will know of it. The treaty with Earth stands. We will compete with them through science and diplomacy, not war. Is that understood? The officer bowed deeply. Yes, Supreme Chair. Back on Earth in a secure underground facility beneath the Himalayas, the Prometheus Project continued its work in secret. Dr. J.N. Park stood before a containment field, watching as tiny particles of matter behaved in ways that defied conventional physics.